Welcome to Kobryn, guys. I'm deep in the provinces. I'm about 300 kilometers southwest of Minsk, deep in the Brest Oblast. So this is round 4 of my provincial trip. Join me on my tour of the town of Kobryn. All right, let's go. Let's try and find my hotel. Let's check in. Let's see what this place has to offer. Welcome to Kobryn, guys. I'm right in the center of Kobryn. So this is the Ploshche Lenina, of course, named after Comrade Lenin. And this is the very, very center of the city itself. It's quite a beautiful city. I went for a walk around last night. So people have asked me, well, where is Kobryn? Well, Kobryn is approximately 300 kilometers southwest of the capital Minsk, and it is approximately about 60 kilometers east of the Oblast capital of Brest. A bit about Kobryn. It's a small town, has a population of about 60,000 people, and it was founded sometime in the late 13th century, sometime around 1287. And in 1795, after the third partition of Poland, it became part of the Russian Empire. And it was during this time that Kobryn was directly affected by the fighting made during the uprising, the Polish uprising, which was led by a guy by the name of Tadeusz Kościuszko, the famous Polish national hero. And one of the Russian generals who was involved in the suppression of the Great Polish Uprising of 1795 was a guy called Field Marshal Suvorov. And as a reward for his suppression of the uprising, Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, gave Kobryn to Field Marshal Suvorov. And of course, the street here in front of me is named after the great Russian military leader himself. Of course, he also fought against Napoleon in 1799 during his campaign on the Alps. He famously got the Russian army out of the Alps in 1799, but he died the following year. The Austrians were here during the Napoleonic Wars, defeated during the Battle of Kobryn, which I will be talking about later. And of course the Germans were here in 1914, and they appeared again in 1941, before this town was liberated by the Red Army in July 1944. So that's just a bit about this town. It's in the Brest Oblast, now in the Republic of Belarus. So let me take you on a little tour of this rather quaint, rather nice city of Kobryn. This is my first time I've been here. I enjoyed it. I have to say I really like this place, and I hope you will too. So let's go on our tour of Kobryn. There is himself, Field Marshal Suvorov. Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Сколько стоит?
2 рубля 40 копеек.
Хорошо. Могу ли я получить разрешение снимать здесь?
Да, но это платно, рубль 20 еще.
Хорошо, хорошо. Wow, I'm now inside the museum, guys, and the lady has brought me inside the this is the 18th century Russian military museum. And it's the Suvorov house. So here we have Peter the Great. Of course, Peter the Great was indeed the first great Russian emperor. He modernized Russia. And what we can see here, guys, this is a drum here of the Semenovsky regiment, sometime around the end of the 18th century. So this museum is devoted to the man himself. Wow, look at all these. Here we have some swords, ceremonial swords. Just want to show you something here. Okay, this is the sergeant's uniform of the Imperial Russian Army from about the mid 18th century. Field Marshal Suvorov campaigned during the Russian-Turkish War from about 1768 to about 1774-75. And this is took place in now modern-day Moldova and Romania. And it was a campaign to capture the Crimea, which they actually did from the Turks and the Tatars. Wow, check this one out, guys. This is like a gun barrel. This was like a mortar. An Austrian gun barrel. What they would do is they'd load some grape shot into this here, and they'd light a fuse. It would explode out at this end. Check this out. Wow. Imagine fighting a war like that. You have to remember, guys, that during this period of time, soldiers they wouldn't shoot from distance. They would actually line up in a straight line in squares, often just 50 or 100 yards away from the enemy, and take pot shots at each other. Cannons, grape shot, musket balls. So the attrition rate was quite high. Okay, now, as you remember, guys, my Polish subscribers, you will instantly recognize this guy here. This is Tadeusz Kotuszko. He is still to this day the national hero of Poland, and he led an uprising in 1794, just before the second partition, or the third partition of Poland, the following year. And his nemesis was, of course, Field Marshal Suvorov. And this was an attempt by the Poles to thwart the partition of Poland by Austria in the south, Prussia in the west, and Russia in the east. Let me show you something, guys. Okay, what we have here. So when Napoleon when he encountered the Russians, this was pretty much the way that they were dressed. Okay, so the Russians had like an olive green and red uniform, and the colors, of course, yellow, saffron, and white, of course, with the Tsarist eagle. Okay, all right, guys. So now we're going to focus on the Napoleonic invasion, 1812, and of course these are the Russian army uniforms, the infantry uniforms, the cavalry from around 1812. So you have to remember, not a lot of people know this, Napoleon lost more men going to Moscow than coming from it. I'll tell you why. Because when Napoleon invaded in June 1812, he invaded during one of the hottest summers on record. So even by the time he went to Smolensk, Napoleon had lost 20% of his men due to exhaustion, dysentery, fever, starvation, and dehydration. The supply lines of the French army couldn't keep up with the march, this relentless marching of many soldiers in 35 degrees Celsius heat. So over his lifetime, Field Marshal Suvorov received many, many decorations and orders. And that, by the way, guys, is his death mask. If ever I wanted a wall carpet, check this out. До свидания. Wow, guys, if you're ever in Kobryn, highly recommend you check this place out. The Suvorov Military Museum. As I mentioned, guys, to you earlier, there were two battles of Kobryn. The first one took place in 1812, in July 1812, during the Napoleonic invasion of Russia. And the last one took place in September 14th to 18th, 1939, during the German invasion of Poland, because this was part of Poland. So, but we're not going to focus on World War II. Today we're going to focus on the Napoleonic invasion of Russia. And what we have here is the commemorative statue that commemorates the famous Russian victory that took place on the 24th of July 1812. This is the famous battle, and it was the first victory of the Russian army during Napoleon's invasion. Now, if you recall, Napoleon invaded Russia on the 24th of June 1812, and his armies, the Grand Armée, amassed a total of nearly 600,000 men, and they attacked on a line from the Baltic Sea all the way down to Brest, which is just 60 kilometers west of here. And Napoleon, when he invaded Russia, The main drive was to go to Moscow and to force the surrender of the Tsar. So what happened was Napoleon decided to leave some troops to protect the flanks of the Russian invasion force. And one section of these troops were Austrian troops under the command of a guy called General von Klengel. And his troops, about 5,000 troops, were stationed here in Kobryn during this time. And under the Russians, under the orders of Marshal Barclay de Tolly, and with General Tormasov, decided to attack the Austrian troops based in this town. It occurred on the 24th of July 1812. The Russians attacked at 9 a.m. That morning, and by midday their forces, Tormasov's forces, had completely surrounded the Austrians who were positioned in this town. And of course it was the first victory of the Russian army. The Austrians surrendered. Incidentally, guys, it was also on this day that the Russian army pulled back towards Smolensk. So actually, got to show you this, guys. These are actually the genuine mortars that were used during the battle from Russia, that were used during the Battle of Kobryn on the 24th of July 1812. These are actually mortars here, not actually cannons, but they're mortars. So some grape shot and projectiles would be loaded in, and they would be fired at the enemy. Of course, they were mounted on these metal caps. And the reason why we know that they are genuine is because if you see on actually one of the mortars, you will see actually the number of the brigade in the Russian army, and it says Alexander. So this is obviously the regimental number. Each regiment had its own number, and obviously the name probably of the Tsar. Let me show you some cannonballs here. So these are the cannonballs that were used in the battle, in both the cannons and the mortars. However, usually for mortars they were loaded with grape shot and they were fired at the enemy. So yeah, just to give you an idea, guys, they're very, very big and very, very heavy. Yeah. I wouldn't like to be an Austrian soldier facing one of these. Definitely not. Wow, the sun's come back out again. So all this talk, this weather is making me thirsty. Let's go grab a Kvass. Здравствуйте. 0 ватт, пожалуйста. Хорошо. Спасибо. До свидания. Right, guys, what I got here, got some Kvass. And Kvass, also known as the Russian Coca-Cola, it's made from rye bread, fermented rye bread, and when it's drank very cold, it's beautiful. Na zdrowie. It's an extra treat for you, my Polish subscribers. So I'm here at the main Catholic church here in Kobryn, the Church of the Dormition. And this is quite a beautiful church, built in the Baroque style, sometime around the early 1840s. It's a beautiful church. Unfortunately, it's closed. And here in this church, there are two main Polish army grave sites. So as I mentioned to you guys before, there were two battles of Kobryn. The first took place on the 24th of July 1812, and the second one took place between the 14th and the 18th of September 1939 during the German invasion of Poland, when the 19th Panzer Division, under the command of Heinz Guderian, fought against the 60th Division of the Polish Army. And right here we have some of the graves of the Polish soldiers who fell in this battle. I have to say it's very, very poignant. It's the day that they fell the 18th of September 1939. This guy here, if I can read him, Czeslaw, probably an officer. Здравствуйте. Da-da. What we have here is the cross that commemorates the Polish soldiers who fell during the Second Battle of Kobryn in 1939.
My name is Czeslaw.
Sorry?
My name is Czeslaw.
Czeslaw. Are you Polish?
Polish.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much, Czeslaw. Wow. This is incredible. So Czeslaw, the caretaker, has actually allowed me inside the church of the Dormition. And of course I will sign. It's a message. Wow. This is it, guys. Many thanks to Czeslaw, who's Polish, by the way. He's an ethnic Pole who lives here in Kobryn. And he's actually opened up the church here for me to see inside. It's quite beautiful. The костёл, да. Красиво, очень красиво. Да. Well, I have to say, guys, I wasn't expecting that. Czeslaw, who's a local ethnic Pole, actually let me inside this beautiful church, the Church of the Dormition, that was built in the mid-19th century. And it's a beautiful church inside, I have to say. And I asked him how many Poles are actually living here in Kobryn, and he said about 300 in total, at the very, very most. Okay guys, my last night in Kobryn. So what I have here, I have some beetroot, potato chips, and pork o'clock, and a bit some sour cream here as well. So guys, some bull mash vodka, local Belarusian vodka. Na zdrowie. Ooh, that's pretty rough. Okay, I'm gonna enjoy this. Well guys, we're back in Ploshche Lenina, the place where I began my journey here in Kobryn last night. It's my last night here in Kobryn. I have to say, I actually do really like this place. The town is quiet, it's quaint, the weather is absolutely fantastic. We had some thunderstorms earlier on, but now this evening it's turned out to be really, really quite well. So on that, guys, I'd like to bid all of you do svidania, do stretchy, and I shall see you on another adventure somewhere at an undisclosed place in the provinces. So goodbye from Kobryn, and I'll leave you with Comrade Lenin.